Good afternoon and welcome to the Data for the American Dream Request for Proposals Information webinar. My name is Brian Prescott and I'm the Vice President at the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, which is better known as NCHMS. NCHMS is the implementation partner for this initiative, the Data for the American Dream initiative. Along with the lead funder Schmidt Futures and Lumina Foundation, we are happy you could join us today. Before we get started, let me give you an idea of how we will be spending the next hour. First, I'm going to start with some logistics and housekeeping, and then I'll introduce the Data for the American Dream Project Director, Allie Bell, who's going to take the bulk of the burden here in talking about the project, and she'll do a brief overview of the project. After she talks about the request for proposals, we will open the line for questions. And part of what we'll do is run through the timeline and before we do that. But let me start with a few logistical notes. First off, this webinar is being recorded. We'll make the recording available on the Data for the American Dream website, which is www.d4ad.com. Most of you probably have already figured this out because you can see it on your screen, but also you visited it in order to register. But the website has information about the initiative, including the RFP, as well as a section for frequently asked questions. The website will be updated throughout the process with additional questions and other information as is needed. All webinar participants today are going to be muted. We will have time for questions, and I'll be moderating those questions. If you have questions, you can use the question and answer functionality to ask those. And as you can see, to pose a question or comment, you can click on the Q&A in the control section. If you're in full screen mode, you might have to hover your mouse over your screen to make the controls visible. Once you click on the Q&A, a window will appear. Type your question in the text field and click Send to submit it. The chat function will not be monitored, so please only use the Q&A feature. At this point, I'm going to introduce Allie Bell, who is the project director for the Data for the American Dream initiative.
Thanks, Brian, and good afternoon, everyone. We are pleased to have so much interest in the Data for the American Dream initiative. Before getting into the specifics of the RFP and your questions, I wanted to provide an overview of the project. As Brian mentioned, Schmidt Futures, which is a philanthropic initiative founded by Eric and Wendy Schmidt, their goal is to improve societal outcomes through the development of emerging technologies that can benefit humanity. There are currently an estimated 13 million under and unemployed American workers. Many of these people are not able to access the information they need to make good decisions about their career pathways, including the kinds of opportunities available in their area and the kinds of training they need to gain the skills to fit those positions. As we know, data can be siloed, and while there have been many advancements in online tools and information available, dashboards are often insufficient. To try to address this problem, Schmidt conceived the Data for the American Dream initiative to encourage partnerships of public and private agencies and organizations to bring together critical data and make them more accessible. Ultimately, the information used from this data can provide better career prospects for low-income, underemployed, and unemployed Americans. As Brian mentioned, Schmidt Futures is the lead funder of this project and is building a coalition of funders. Lumina Foundation, for example, has already signed on as a partner. Up to 3 pilot projects will be funded as part of the D4AD initiative. We anticipate awarding grants between $750,000 and $1.5 million. The grants will last 18 months, starting in September 2019 and ending at the end of February 2021. We don't, however, expect that the projects will end in 2021. We expect that the projects will be seeking other sources of funding or have a plan to ensure the long-term sustainability of their projects. As part of the D4AD initiative, we are looking for proposals that describe projects that align with the D4AD goals of making regionally or state-specific data available especially data that can help low-income and underrepresented Americans make decisions about their careers and career pathways. We've often talked about imagining the end result as kind of a Zillow for career pathways. We haven't been very prescriptive, though, in the RFP about what specifically the project should look like, and that's been partially on purpose. You can imagine that different organizations and efforts might be at different phases in their growth of a data sharing partnership that eventually makes information available for under and unemployed Americans. So successful applications should propose projects that align with at least one of the following phases of a data sharing initiative. One is innovative efforts to create or expand data sharing partnerships. The key word here is innovative. These projects would form or expand sustainable partnerships that could include private and public agencies and organizations. For example, these can include governmental agencies, post-secondary institutions, nonprofit organizations, employers, and private sector organizations. These projects would move beyond the data sharing agreements commonly made as part of the state longitudinal data system and incorporate different kinds of data or strategies for forming data agreements. For example, they may be focused more regionally within a state or on an urban area that crosses state borders. The second kind of project or phase may be a project that produces a data product, like an API, that incorporates and makes available data from multiple organizations that have formed already a sustainable data sharing agreement. The included data should contain information on training, education, and jobs in a given area that could be used to inform career pathways above and beyond what is currently available. The data product should be made available to developers and other users of data-driven information with the ultimate goal of providing useful information to a target population. Finally, a successful project proposal may describe activities that ensure data and data tools produced are available to and used by an identified target population. Successful pilot projects would describe specific procedures for ensuring the target population is accessing and using the data. This can involve partnerships outside of data providers, for example, with a social service organization or other agencies that work directly with the target population. If you want some more information, there are some illustrative examples of potential projects available in the frequently asked questions section of the Data for American Dream website. Note that these are not comprehensive, nor are these designs a requirement, but they should give you an idea of the types of projects Schmidt Futures is looking to fund. The most successful proposals will be innovative and propose a solution to the problem of making data available and ensuring that the information can be accessed, understood, and will benefit a target population. In terms of the target population, we have broadly identified low-income, underrepresented, underemployed, and unemployed Americans as a population this project should ultimately benefit. Proposed projects should specify the particular target population they are trying to reach. One question many interested applicants have already been asking is who is eligible to apply. As stated in the RFP, all proposals must identify a lead organization. That organization must be a government entity or a tax-exempt 501c3. The Data for the American Dreams Initiative Theory of Change places special emphasis on partnerships. We encourage applicants to consider the types of partnerships that could best help them accomplish their project's goals and, as a part of their application materials, provide support so that those partnerships are attainable during the project period. The application process for Data for the American Dream grants is a two-step process. The first step is the submission of a letter of intent. These letters should be no more than 3 pages and should give the following: a brief overview of the project, including which of the 3 or which many of the 3 phases it most closely aligns to, a list of the organizations that will be part of the project, a brief description of the key personnel who will be involved in the project, a description of the target audience, that is, who will this project ultimately benefit, and the likely proposed grant amount. In the event that the total budget for the project is more than the proposed grant amount, please also include the total project budget and sources of additional funding, whether you've already secured those or are pursuing them. Letters of intent are due April 3rd, 2019, and will be reviewed, and projects that are most aligned with the objectives and goals of the Data for the American Dream initiative will be invited to submit a full proposal. Applicants will be notified of invitation to submit a full proposal by April 15th, 2019. Now let's get a bit into the proposal requirements, and these are found on the website as well as in the RFP itself. So this is everywhere. Don't worry about writing too busily while I'm speaking. Those who are invited to submit a full proposal should submit one that is no more than 30 pages in length, and that would exclude any appendices, charts, graphs, and supporting materials. The 30 pages must include the following: a project overview, which is an overall description of the project and how it aligns with the objectives of the Data for the American Dream initiative, including the specific problem to be solved and the needs that will be met, the audience and target population for the project, specific anticipated goals, outcomes, and deliverables of the project, including 1-year, 2-year, and long-term goals, and a brief discussion of how the project will achieve the desired goals. We'd also like to see the list of partners or collaborators on the project, which would include a description of participants in any data sharing agreement, any current agreements and processes for ensuring security and privacy of the data, any strategic partners you might have and the role or expertise of each partner, and any technical partners, proposed vendors, or additional funding sources. If possible, the application should include letters of support from potential partners, and those letters would not count towards the proposal's 30-page limit. Contact for information for each organization may also be provided in an appendix, and really the more information you can give us about the kinds of partners that you either have secured or are talking to is very helpful. The third thing we're asking you to include is the anticipated impact and deliverables. And this would be a description of the specific deliverables of the project and their anticipated impact depending on the project's goals. In the case it is beyond the scope of the project to make information available directly to the target population, so if you're aligned with one of the earlier phases and don't anticipate in the 18 months that you will be working directly with the target population, we'd also like to see the theory of change through which the data or data product deliverables could eventually impact the target population. The fourth thing we'd like to see is a description of risks and significant challenges, which would include anything that might stand in the way of your project's success in enough detail for the proposal reviewers to understand any distinct characteristics about those risks and challenges, and for which additional supports or technical assistance from NCHEMs or other implementation partners may prove valuable. Applicants should explicitly address in this section their plans for ensuring and maintaining data privacy and security. We would also like you to submit the qualifications of key personnel, and that is the roles of key project staff from each partner organization, as well as any project leads. We'd like to see a brief biographical sketch. Resumes may be included for key personnel in an appendix. One aspect of the Data for the American Dream project that's very important is the ability of these projects to last beyond the grant period. To that end, we'd like to see a sustainability plan, which is a plan for how the project may be scaled and sustained beyond the grant period, including any additional expected funding streams. Finally, we'd like to see a timeline and budget. The project timeline with the proposed deliverables should not extend beyond February 28, 2021. The timeline should provide sufficient detail about the project activities for the selection committee to discern the means by which the pilot's implementation and preparation of deliverables will be carried out, including any important milestone dates and events. The timeline must be accompanied by a detailed budget. Proposals are due on May 31st, 2019. They can be emailed to me, the project director, Allie Bell at allie@nchems.org, which is the same way you'll be submitting the letters of intent. I'd like to really quickly review the timeline, even though throughout the description of the letters of intent and RFP, we've talked about all of these dates. Coming up pretty quickly on April 3rd, letters of intent are due. By April 15th, we will be issuing invitations for full proposals. Full proposals will then be due on May 31st, and we will notify the selected projects by June 28th. At this point, we would like to open it up for questions, and so Brian, I will let you see what questions have been asked, and we can give folks a minute to ask more.
Great. Our first question, Allie, is do you want or accept letters of support with the letter of interest?
The answer to that is yes, we could take letters of support with the letter of interest, but what we do need to know more is the list of partners that have already signed on and those that you're pursuing. If you do provide a letter of support, those would not count against the 3-page maximum for the LOI.
Thanks, Allie. Next question is, was the D4AD RFP distributed generally or to an invited group of eligible awardees?
That's a great question. The RFP was distributed pretty broadly through our networks here at NCHEMS. We had some help from Lumina Foundation, the National Association of State Higher Education, executive officers, and then we did ask our friends and networks to distribute as they saw fit. So it was a pretty broad distribution.
Great. What is the official start date for winning proposals?
The official start date is September, as early as September 1st, 2019. The projects are not, the grant period does not run longer than February 28th, 2021.
And I think that we can answer the next question in relation to that, which is, the next question is, what is NCHEM's role in this work? And so one of the reasons we don't have a specific start date for the winning proposals at this point, beyond generally speaking, we're aiming for the early part of September, is because the grants will be awarded directly by Schmidt Futures at this point, and NCHEM's role, excuse me, NCHEM's role is as an implementation partner. What that means is that this is an initiative of Schmidt Futures, and we have been active in the task of trying to help identify the kinds of sites and the kinds of possibilities that are available and in terms of recruitment. We have also been working closely with our colleagues at Schmidt to design the RFP selection process, and we will be overseeing a process of selection in which we're convening some experts as well to help us sift through the responses that come. As we make announcements about selected pilot sites, we will transition to a place where we are serving in a role where we're convening the pilot sites, we're bringing technical assistance to them. We will be looking for ways to work with the selected pilot sites to identify gaps and opportunities to bring resources to them which would be most helpful in achieving their goals and the like. And in responding to that question, I think I also took a stab at responding to a couple of other questions that have come up in the intervening period around, will the grantees be convened for mutual learning? The answer is yes. We do anticipate bringing the grantees together and also bringing some external resources to them. and then what kinds of technical assistance is available through this initiative. And I think the answer to that is, in some respects, it depends on the kinds of activities that the pilot sites will be designing for work. But we expect that there'll be help around sharing data, data governance, engagement with the target populations, and the like. One of the asks in the risks and significant challenges portion of the RFP as well, in regards to what kinds of the question of what kinds of technical assistance will be made available. In that section of the RFP, we are asking respondents to indicate what kinds of technical experience or assistance they will need. So I got carried away there, and so I'm going to go back to asking questions and letting Allie respond. Do all award funds need to go to costs related to data, or could we use some funds to build out a data system and some funds to develop programming that the data or information is needed? Right, so we are not prescribing how the funds need to be used. I think the most successful proposals will have a strategy for using the grant funding in a way that best addresses the project and best aligns it with the Data for the American Dream goals. So if some of the funds you really need to use for developing programming, and that's how you think the funds should best be used, as long as your budget reflects that and that is reflected in your description of your program and how you'll be achieving the goals and aligning to the D4AD goals, that's perfectly acceptable in a proposal. Can I add something to that? I think one of the things that we are interested in that shouldn't be lost in the weeds here is that, and I think Allie's made it clear, but I want to put a little additional emphasis on it, and that is that we need to figure out a way to ensure that the data, whatever it is that gets built out, reaches the populations that you're aiming to serve and is found to be useful by that group. So we do anticipate seeing some proposals that include funding committed to ensuring that underemployed and underserved populations are actually able to get and make good use of the data. With that, I'm going to go on to the next question, which is, do you welcome multiple project streams in one proposal if they are aligned to the various phases mentioned? Yeah, that's a great question. I mentioned earlier in the webinar that we've on purpose been slightly vague in some of our descriptions, and that's because we're really interested in seeing what the field is coming up with partially. And yes, I think that we would welcome multiple project streams in one proposal if they're aligned and it makes sense that they're being submitted under one proposal. Can you give us more information on the types of businesses you'd like us to partner with and to what degree? So in terms of the kinds of partners that would be appropriate, the sky really is the limit. Whatever partnerships would further your project goals and make sense for your specific projects. In terms of the degree to which the partnership is entrenched into the project, again, that would depend on the design of your specific project. So that's linked to another question we have here from somebody who identifies as a for-profit technology vendor. How can we get involved in this project and support the objectives of this pilot? That is a great question and actually a really exciting one. I think the best way, if you don't have a non-for-profit partner to submit a letter of intent with, go ahead but you would still like to be involved in this initiative generally, go ahead and send me an email and we will talk about the best way to do that. Let me add to that, that it is anticipated that there might be some pilots that come forward with a nonprofit in the lead or governmental entity and a partnership in place to have a for-profit technology vendor to work on one, like for instance, an API tool that might be useful. So I think that's very much within the bounds of possibility here. Likewise, working with business representative organizations like the Chamber of Commerce to identify the workforce needs in your community that can best be served by the training programs, and how do you get information around the challenges in the labor market, information gaps, for using that chamber resources as a way to do that is another example. And similarly, if it's not the chamber, it could be a group of businesses that are involved and active in the work. Are you accepting proposals from national organizations who are doing state level or regional work?
Yes, we have not limited the kinds of organizations that can be involved in these projects. The only limitation that we've placed so far is on who can be the lead entity.
Should an evaluation component be included, or will NCHIMS evaluate the initiatives?
That is a great question. What we are asking applicants to include are some goals and metrics that they're hoping to be able to achieve. We will actually be having a third-party evaluator across all the projects.
Okay. In partnering with a private vendor, do you have any concerns about the monetization of the potential work product? We are intending that one of the strategies for scaling this work may involve the use of tools that for-profit providers might create. We do expect that the projects are built for public use. So to the extent that there might be proprietary data sources or proprietary tools, in such cases we would be keenly interested in the sustainability and scalability plan associated with proposals that include those components. Do we need to know all the partners we will be working with at the time of the application?
Can we release an RFP after awarded funds to find the proper partner or service provider? The short answer to this is that you do not need to have all the partnership agreements in place. However, in your proposal, we need to see enough evidence that the right kinds of partners are being brought to the table in order to ensure the project's success.
What are the deliverables or outcomes that we will need to report on if awarded a grant?
That is a great question. So if you look in the FAQ section of the Data for the American Dream website, there is a little more information about the kinds of things that projects will be evaluated on. And those we've asked for you to identify your own deliverables and goals, and then include those as part of your response to the RFP.
Next question is, what outcome do you want for the under and underemployed? Jobs or more training?
That's a great question. The ultimate goal of the Data for the American Dream initiative is to, especially in a continually automating economic labor market, to be able to improve career prospects for American workers. Like I said, we are asking each of the pilot projects that are being proposed to identify their own outcomes and deliverables, because projects may be starting from different places, and within the 18 months may be able to get different distances down the track, so to speak. So we're relying a little bit on applicants to help us with figuring out what the impact of their specific project will be. But overall, the goal of the Data for the American Dream initiative would be to provide under and unemployed, particularly low income and underrepresented Americans with the information that they need to get the training to fill jobs that can give them a meaningful career. So the answer to jobs or training is yes, both. We want people to have better information about the whole career pathway, including training needed to be on a certain career pathway.
The next question is, does the work have to be focused in one state, or can multi-state approaches submit? I think that the original intent was to have work focused in one state, one region, one area. If a potential applicant has an innovative solution that involves a multi-state approach, we'd be interested in seeing what that proposal looks like. Very much, actually, I would agree with that. If folks on the line know me, they know that I have a background in some of the multi-state data and approaches to this, and so I would say we're very much open to programs that have a multi-state approach, either multiple states or a metropolitan statistical area that crosses a state border. We also have a question that says, does the project's target audience have to be at a national level, or could it be targeted to a specific region or state? And I would say, in response to that, and building off of what I just said, that our expectations are that the proposals will be somewhat geographically bounded, but that we do hope that the pilots generate learnings that can be brought to scale beyond the original geographic sites. And so there's also, we do hold out the possibility that there's a solution to this that's a national one in scope. But it will be but I think that the starting place for us is that it's either a state or it's a limited number of states or MSAs or cities that's going to be successful in responding to this. The next question is one it took us a long time to get to, but we were anticipating. With only 3 selected pilots, how many invitations are you planning to select? That is a good question. Our intent at this point is no more than 10. We expect to invite probably 5 to 7 applicants to submit a full proposal. The next question is, can the funds be used to buy commercial data products? Yes, I think the important thing is to make sure that your budget makes sense in terms of what your project and your project goals are. We have not, at this point, put any limitations on what the funds can be used for outside of providing a project that is aligned with the Data for the American Dream initiative. The next question is, will you consider applications with a focus on career pathways for youth and young adults in K-12? Yeah, I think we would consider applications from that, that as long as the focus is getting the information into the hands of people who need it most, particularly low income and underrepresented Americans, we're open to seeing what ideas come from the field. So yes, absolutely. The next question is, will you publish a list of organizations and/or individuals who registered for this webinar? I don't think we can do that. Certainly not without the consent of those folks who are on it, as indicated by the fact that we have a lot of anonymous people who are asking us questions. I think what we can do, though, is there was a question about for-profit organizations looking to be partners, and I had responded to that question with send me an email. I think on the RFP and the FAQ page, of the Data for the American Dream initiative, we can list the companies that have indicated that they would be interested in being part of this project. We're being quiet because for the moment, unless we've missed one along the way, we have run out of questions. Some of you may be typing them in. One has arrived. Oops. Do the results or outcomes of the proposal need to be public-facing to be reachable by the target audience? I think we assume that that if there's a tool that's built, that it will have it will be available to the public in some way, shape, or form. For instance, if we were if a tool was to be built as part of this proposal to deliver data, for example, to one-stop shops located around your state, then we would expect that tool to also be available more broadly. It may be the case that folks who are not getting it oriented to that tool may have some difficulty using it effectively, but presumably in such a case, the one-stop shops would be equipped to use that tool effectively, just as one example. But the public use of this, of the outputs of this is sort of the operating assumption that we're working with at the moment. Will you please post the questions and answers from this webinar on the D4AD site? We are posting the webinar itself. We may be able to do some transcription.
Yes, well, so that there will be a link to the recording of this webinar posted. In addition, we will take the frequently asked questions and go ahead and add them to the frequently asked question portion of the website.
How will stakeholder engagement be assessed? I think that's a good question.
That's a good question.
I think we're going to look for some help from you in terms of let me back up and say that I'm assuming in responding to this question that the stakeholders that you're referring to may include the clients, the target members of the target population, as well as potentially other stakeholders that stand to benefit from making these data available, such as folks who are caseworkers in, let's say, community colleges or one-stop shops, as well as businesses and so forth. I think an answer, and this may not be a particularly well-formed answer at the moment, but to some extent, as you consider putting in information about the metrics that you have in mind, you may include some of those things. We also, in the evaluation that we intend to fund with the external, that will be external, we will work on trying to figure out a way to do that effectively.
If this question was about how we will be assessing in our review of the proposals the partners' engagement in the project, there's a few ways that applicants can provide some evidence of support of partners, and that can include through letters from state, regional, and local leaders, letters from local employers, evidence of additional funding commitment, and other things that have shown engagement of the partners in the proposal in working together.
Is the expectation to use programmatic data with personally identifiable information or broad data from public sources?
We don't actually have that expectation set at the moment. That is up to each individual project's design. What I would say is of utmost importance to Schmidt, Lumina, and Thames, and everybody else engaged in this project is that the data security and privacy has been assured according to best practices and as well as state and national laws. The Schmidt has really made it clear that that data security and privacy are of the utmost importance throughout this. So in the letters of intent and the RFP, we need to see some assurance that privacy and security have been given careful consideration, and there's a solid plan in place to protect the data that are being used at whatever level they are.
And if I could build off of that, I'm going to use a moment or two of the answer to this to suggest that there's other kinds of data that may not have been envisioned in this question that we would be pleased to see included as part of somebody's proposal. And by that I mean new data such as job postings, scrape data from resumes that are posted online, as well as public source aggregate data that's either public in the way that we understand it as out there already, as well as aggregated data from data matches that are done at the individual level.
We will give folks a couple more minutes to answer, type in some questions here.
And they keep coming. For applicants that receive an award, how will you be tracking progress and evaluating deliverables and milestones of the project? That is, will there be some form of quarterly reporting or formal submission of project progress updates?
So the quick answer to this is we have a third-party evaluator who will be doing at least a 1 and 18-month evaluation of the project. Like Brian said earlier, the grants are coming from Schmidt Futures, and we have not heard of additional reporting requirements at this time, but that is something that will be part of the final grant agreement.
I think it's also true that with up to 3 pilots, it will be a case where we'll have a pretty good sense of how progress is being made, because there aren't so many that we can't do our best to try to stay informed. And in addition, there will be, as we mentioned, convenings where pilot sites, we anticipate pilot sites will come together, and a part of that will be sharing of the progress. So I would not anticipate, and I'm hopeful that we can make the kind of arduous reporting, at least during the progress of the projects. We don't want to overburden you with those responsibilities.
We want you to focus on the projects themselves. Let's give folks a couple more minutes to type any last questions in.
These were great questions. Not seeing any more questions. We'll keep the Q&A screen up just in case they come in as we wrap up. But I'll turn it back over to Allie to close us out. But for my part, we just got a question. Hold on. Oh, thanks for the answer.
That's an easy question to answer. You're welcome.
You're welcome. I think I want to thank you all for your attention and your interest in this project. We really are putting a lot of our hopes on all of you who are interested in potentially putting a proposal together. To the extent that as Ali said earlier, that the RFP lacks some specificity, that I hopefully reflects a little humility on our part, because I think there are, even though that Ali and I have worked in this space for some time, we are looking for fresh ideas and opportunities to really make a difference. We are aware that there's a lot of activity that many of you are engaged in that's already out there, and we just want to encourage you to not have too many constraints as you think about what would be appropriate. And with that, I'll let Ali close us out.
I just want to echo Brian's thanks to everybody, both for participating and for your thoughtful questions and energy around the RFP to this point. If you have any questions or thoughts, my contact information is up on the screen now. Also, you can access that through the Data for the American Dream website, which again is www.d4ad.com.
And we look forward to seeing some letters of interest from hopefully as many of you as possible in the very near future. Thanks again for your time this afternoon. As we said, the webinar will be up and available for review if needed. And with that, we will look forward to hearing from you with a letter of interest. Thanks very much for your time.